All right, so today we are going to cover sleep. And but before we kind of um, get into that, we are going to just kind of talk about small steps and how they're important. So in this journey, we went through several modules, each being 15 minutes or so a piece. So there's a lot of data, a lot of little baby steps to be working on and putting into place. And I just wanted to kind of give you an illustration. I saw this one time on Facebook, so I'm not sure who Phil is, but that's why it has that little hashtag on it. And I'm not sure even who the Overflow Foundation is, but when I saw it, I was like, this is a perfect illustration of why all the small steps add up to get you where you want to go. Um, and as you can see, you'll look back on this and there'll be big things that you have changed, but you kind of got there through a bunch of little small steps. And I think that's important um, to focus on and not lose sight of that, because sometimes in this work you're like, I've been doing it for all this time, and maybe you've hit a plateau, or maybe you've even went a little backwards. It's okay. That does happen, and we just have to keep moving forward and uncovering more rocks. So this is one rock that definitely does not get enough attention. And in today's society, especially as Americans, we actually wear it as a badge of honor if we can survive without sleep. And when I say survive, that's exactly what I mean. Because when we don't get enough sleep, our body is just prioritizing surviving. It is not prioritizing thriving. And we are doing a lot of detriment. So, one of the things that I kind of learned when I started doing a deeper dive into this is I thought that all the stages of sleep, it's like the first part of the night, you're in stage one, and the second part of the night, you're in stage two, and so on and so forth. Well, that's not really true. You go through all of these stages several times throughout the night. So there's several sleep cycles, and there should be about 4 to 5 of them. And each one of them takes about 90 minutes. So if you take 90 times 5, divide that by 60 minutes, that's 7.5 hours. Okay. So we all should be striving for 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I don't know about you, but it is winter right now. I'm not sure when you'll be listening to this recording, but I sleep more in the winter. I just do. My body just craves it. My body just needs it. And I've actually been sleeping closer to 9 or 10 hours. Um, Probably about the 9 hour mark more readily, but there have been a few 10 hours. So if your body is needing sleep, you need to give it sleep. There's a lot of healing that occurs. And as these stages go throughout the night, the shorter stages are at the beginning, and then the longer stages happen as the nights go on. So they kind of flip flop. So stage one is longer at the beginning of the night, and then by the end of the night, stage one is shorter, but REM sleep is longer. Okay, so like kind of think about it that way. That's why the longer hours are more restorative. Okay. So during stage one sleep, you could be easily awakened. Your muscles, they start to relax and they may twitch a little bit when they do that. And you have slow eye movements. During stage two, your breathing and your heart rate are still regular, but the body temperature starts to drop and you lose a sense of place, and the brain waves start to slow down a little bit, and your eye movement will stop. And then when we start stage three, your blood pressure starts to drop, giving your heart a rest, and your muscles relax. And this is where tissue growth and repairs happen. This is also where energy is restored. Hormones are being released, even slower brain waves. So they're even slower than what happens in stage two. And then in REM sleep, the brain is active and it's dreaming, and your eyes may dart rapidly. If you've ever watched somebody sleep, that's not creepy, just saying. Muscles are paralyzed, and the irregular breathing and heart rate may occur. But this is what's happening when our organs get a rest. And this is the only time that they get to slow down. So we know they can't completely shut off, right? Otherwise, we die. They all have a purpose, but they do get to take a rest, a siesta, so to speak. Okay. While all these things are happening, they are getting rejuvenated and getting to rest. And so, all the things that are getting a rest during this time is all of the organs. So, your brains, your heart, not your brains. We only have one brain, everybody's brain. Your heart, your spleen, your pancreas, your stomach, your bowels, your kidneys, the liver, and your lungs. They all have a time during sleep cycles that is specifically dedicated to them. And we really need to make sure that we are allowing appropriate sleep cycles. All right. So there are all kind of hormones that are released in the brain during sleep, and those are growth hormones, antidiuretic hormone, which helps regulate hydration, melatonin, oxytocin, which is, people call it the feel good, happy hormone, and prolactin. Prolactin is really high, especially when women are lactating or breastfeeding. Okay. Now, hormones released in the body during sleep. So that was the brain. So in the body, you have insulin being released, you have cortisol being released. This is one of the reasons why 30 minutes after awakening will be your highest cortisol levels. Okay. Because that is your cortisol awakening response. Okay. Aldosterone helps regulate the fluids and the salt and potassium in your body. And ghrelin and leptin are there to regulate your eating and your hunger. Now, I don't know about you, but when I tend to not sleep well, I tend to want to eat more. That is not a coincidence. Okay. All right. So, one of the things that I kind of want to end on just on the presentation piece is, what time does your sleep bus arrive? Because for most of us, we probably all have a set time that we have to get up in the morning, right? Like, you've got to be at work or you've got to be somewhere for an appointment. So, what time does that sleep bus arrive? So I'm yawning right now. I'm probably yawning because I had bread for lunch and I don't typically do that. This is what happens. This is why I don't do that on a regular basis. But whenever the first road of your sleep bus, whenever that occurs, is when you start yawning. And we all have a tendency to push through it and not go to sleep. Well, if you push through it, then it'll be a whole nother sleep cycle before you'll get tired again. And so you've wasted a whole amount of time. So the goal is to make sure that we are listening to our body. And when that bus comes up and starts blowing the horn and you start yawning, that you get on it and you go to sleep and you don't try to push through it. I always tell people, please do not miss your sleep bus. I don't care if it's 7:30 or 8 o'clock. sometimes that is when my sleep bus comes. Not often, but sometimes it does. And my sleep bus is definitely arriving usually somewhere between 9 and 9:30. If I make it to 10, it's kind of an interesting thing. Some things must be going on because I'm not usually going to make it to 10 o'clock. But that's how I'm able to get the amount of sleep that I have required. I am also not a pleasant person if I don't get enough sleep. And if you can think about it, my patience isn't as high. I don't tolerate things as well. I don't handle situations as well as if I'm tired. So to keep just everything balanced, sleep is key. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'm going to talk about some things to help with having good sleep. So I think I should be back here now. So let's come back here. All right, so we're going to put this in the notes of this module, which will be our sleep hygiene kind of handout I mean, if you're taking notes, that's great. But if not, this can kind of help you just know what to do. So we'll put this handout here too. But melatonin is one of those things that is responsible for making sure that we do go to sleep. Well, melatonin and cortisol are against each other. So if there is a large amount of cortisol and you're completely stressed out, it's no wonder that you can't sleep because melatonin is going to lose that battle every single time. Okay. So cortisol levels have to be low enough to allow for the melatonin to do what it's supposed to do because melatonin's never going to win that battle. Okay. This is one of the reasons why when the body is just exhausted, it will flatline your cortisol so that you have no choice but to rest because it will not give you the cortisol to have energy. Okay. But melatonin is secreted in the pineal gland. Okay. And that is only responsive to darkness. So in order to have a larger number of melatonin hormone, you need to set up the environment. So we need to be doing activities that lower our cortisol and not increase our cortisol. So like low noise, maybe turning some lights off. I know like in my living room, I have an overhead light, but we don't turn that on. We keep kind of a backlight on behind us so that that room stays darker because we're typically watching TV, right, in the evening time, me and my family. Also, kind of be mindful of what you are watching on TV. Like, right, like I know Criminal Minds used to be, like, that would just freak me out because there was some weird stuff on there. Um, that was like adrenaline engaging, right? That's probably not your best choice of things to be watching in the evening if you're trying to wind down. So kind of keep that in mind. The other thing is the full spectrum light that comes from tablets, phones, TVs, getting blue light blocker glasses or get screens that block some blue light, that kind of thing, to just help if you have to work on some of those things, that you're at least filtering out some of that blue light, which is just excitatory in nature. Some other things that may help is just quieter evening activities, right? So, like reading a book or taking a bath, going for a light stroll outdoors. I would say do that a little earlier and then you come home because for me, like taking a walk like invigorates me, especially in the winter, right? So I wouldn't want to take a walk past about 6 o'clock in order to go to bed. But doing something, being tired enough to go to sleep. I think sometimes we have not gotten enough physical activity to actually make our bodies tired. You can cuddle with a pet, cuddle with a kid, right? Folding laundry. That is definitely not on my list, but it is listed in the handout for completeness. But I hate to fold laundry. I want to do that earlier in the day and just get it done. So again, turn off full spectrum light, about 1 to 2 hours, right? So not checking your email, especially if it might upset you, not looking at your smartphone a ton, right? Avoid amping up your brain, okay? So like don't sit there and like read stressful emails or have stressful conversations. Um, no caffeinated food or drink after about 2 p.m. So things like tea, even green tea does have some caffeine in it. Coffee, soda, chocolate has bromelain in it, which is stimulatory. Um, so, just kind of keep in mind how you metabolize caffeine. So I wouldn't have any after 2 p.m. if I was having trouble sleeping. Make it quiet, but maybe not too quiet. So sometimes for me, if I can hear everything, that's usually not a good um, option. So, like having some white noise or a fan or an air purifier going, those are all things that can help just drown out, especially like if you have kids or you have dogs, any kind of animals. Sometimes they can just be helpful to just kind of drown out some of that noise. Obviously, if there's some major something happening, you're going to know. But just to help kind of make everything kind of numb, so to speak, in the noise category. Temperature. So rooms which are too hot or too cold tend to wake us up. Okay. And usually people do better with a slightly cooler room and then have blankets to get the temperature that they want. For me, I like to have a heating blanket in the middle of the winter, the fall and the spring. Only during the summer do I usually not use one. That doesn't work for everybody, but just know what kind of works for you and test that out. I would rather have it cooler and then have more blankets. Avoiding allergens. Okay, so having a air purifier in your bedroom can help tremendously. Making sure that if you are allergic to, pet dander or dust mites or anything like that, that you are keeping that area as clean as possible from those things, or washing as much as you can, because that's where you're going to spend a tremendous amount of time. We should be spending 7 to 8 hours there at least. If there are problems snoring, I would definitely make sure that you get tested for sleep apnea, because if you have sleep apnea, your body thinks it's dying every night. Imagine the stress that is occurring, right? If it's not as bad as sleep apnea, but maybe just some mouth breathing, you can do some simple mouth taping so that you are actually breathing out your nose, because mouth breathing is also very stressful to the body. Making sure that our digestion is pretty quiet is another item. So, I would not be eating for a full 3 hours before bed. Unless I've spoken to you specifically about having a small snack for a particular reason. For most people, I would say the last meal of the day needs to occur greater than 3 hours before going to bed. Having a relaxing ritual that you do at night, like whether that is an herbal tea, some examples are tulsi, chamomile, valerian, or passion flower. A hot bath, maybe with Epsom salt, we can always get more magnesium absorbed that way. Or maybe 10 minutes of gratitude journaling, being excited about what has happened through our day and being thankful for the small things that are occurring in our life. or maybe doing some inspirational reading. So I would keep in mind, right, that reading can be the same effect as watching TV. If you are reading, like a Stephen King thriller or what is it, Tom Clancy, suspense, something that's just kind of intense and high intensity, that's probably not the book we want to be choosing right before we go to bed. And again, make sure that you're comfortable, because we're spending a third of our life in bed. So if we have a 24-hour day, we all got the same 24 hours, and I've just told you we need to be sleeping 8. That is a third of the day. So make sure that your bed is good quality, your pillow is good quality, that the bedding itself makes you feel warm and cozy, right? Because if you don't like any of those things, then it's just not going to be a good experience. So it really needs to be like a haven for you in the bedroom. All right, so that is the content that I wanted to cover today, and talking about sleep and how important it is. Um, I will open it up to questions now. Are there any questions for this session about anything? All right, not hearing any. I will go ahead and wrap up the session, but I did want to give a small plug for the resets that we're doing in the month of January each week, to just kind of help everyone get back on track a little bit. And the other thing is the book club that we are also starting. So if either of those interest you and you haven't received any information about that, you can reach out to Yushay, my assistant, and we can get you that information so that you can get plugged into those and get connected. So if there's no questions, I have given the appropriate amount of time and silence. I'm going to end the session, and I hope y'all have a great rest of the week during this cold weather, and maybe cross your fingers we get snow. Who knows? I've seen some 10-day forecasts that say there's a possible chance, but when it gets closer, you never know what happens. All right. Have a great week. Bye-bye.